Hey guys, it's Richard Friend for Lost Laurel. I wanted to give you a quick update on the Stefanie Watson cold case. Today is March 28th, and originally it was scheduled to be the start of the trial for her killer, John Ernest Walsh. Recently he accepted a plea deal, and in exchange for kind of a symbolic sentence of 33 years, they're going to forego a trial, and that basically ensures that he's never getting out of prison again. He's never eligible for parole. The sentence is actually 30 years for second-degree murder instead of first-degree, and 3 years for false imprisonment. And I had the honor of sitting with Stefanie's family today at the sentencing at the Prince George's County Circuit Courthouse in Upper Marlboro. And so I'm doing a quick video because I was going to write about it, but I've been up since 5:30 this morning, and then the drive there, and I know Stefanie's family came down from Pennsylvania, and just trying to find parking at the courthouse and, you know, finding the room and all of that. And anyway, needless to say, we're all pretty fried tonight. So one of my buddies said, just do a video and recap what you saw today, and I thought that's a good idea, so I'm going to try to do that. But basically, having never been to a courthouse for a murder conviction, and hopefully never again, I will give you just a recap of what this was like. It was scheduled for 9 o'clock this morning, and we got there in time, and it turns out I don't know if the judge was just late or what have you, but when he finally arrived at like 9:30, he had, I guess it was a jury pool, or, you know, where they're choosing a jury for something else completely different. He decided he wanted to do that first. I don't know why. If it had something to do with other attorneys who were there and he wanted to get them out of there or what. So he said, you know, we'll come back at like 10:30. So we all kind of went out into the atrium area, and we see like 50 potential jurors go in several minutes later. And sure enough, they were in there until like 11. So we didn't get called back in until about 11 o'clock. So then once we're in there, it's just this, it's a surreal feeling, you know, because you've seen courtroom dramas on TV and in movies. And I'm sure a lot of you, like me, have been to traffic court before for speeding tickets and the like. But knowing that at any given moment, the door is going to open, and this guy that you've only seen a picture of, who for now 34 years almost, we've, you know, always wondered, who is the guy who killed Stefanie Watson? You know that in a couple of seconds that door's going to open and he's going to come out. And it's just a very bizarre feeling. But sure enough, you know, he does come out. And I'll give you a quick overview of how this was. There was just a public defender for him, the state's attorney, prosecutor for us, a judge, the typical big courtroom setting. Detective Nelson was there from PG County Homicide. He brought the entire cold case file with him in case it was needed, which it wasn't. But he was carrying that thing like luggage, which was interesting to see. But there was no one there for Walsh, obviously. But anyway, he does come out, and two, you know, big, stocky guards, I don't know if they're guards or marshals or whatever, but these guys were, you know, more than capable of restraining anybody, let alone, you know, a guy like him. But Walsh comes out, and he doesn't look at anybody. He's using a walker, which I'm told he doesn't really need, but I don't know if he was going for a little sympathy from whoever, knowing it was a plea deal anyway, so there wasn't like a leniency clause in there to be negotiated. But anyway, he came, you know, slowly shuffling out with a walker. He was wearing prison clothes. He was not wearing a suit by any means. He had kind of a grayish and blue multi-layered sweatshirt ensemble going on. He was wearing a wool cap. It was cold and rainy this morning, but that broke as soon as we got out, and it turned out to be a really nice day. But he did take his cap off as soon as he came in. His hair wasn't long, but it was just kind of all over the place from, you know, head, if you will. And he went focused directly on the table that he was going to, where his public defender was sitting, and he went over and sat beside her. Never once looked in our direction, never turned back, never made eye contact with anybody. And it wasn't, I didn't get a sense that it was like from any arrogance on his part. I got the sense that it was complete cowardice, that he just did not have the courage to look over there. He knew that there was an entire row. The front row was filled with family members and friends, and he did not look at all, not once. So once he sat down, the judge kind of went through, I would say it's almost like a protocol to find out if he was mentally fit, if he knew what he was getting into, basically. And he asked him a series of questions, basically had him state his name, state his age, which coincidentally he just turned 71 yesterday, funny enough. But it's surprising, because I always wondered, what does he sound like even? What does this guy, I've seen the one picture of him, the recent mugshot, and I've seen the older mugshots of him. But I wondered, what does his voice sound like? And not a strong voice either. Of course, I just lost mine there at the same time. But he wasn't as tall as I expected for some reason. I mean, again, 71 years old, I'm sure he shrunk a little bit, but he just looked like a broken old man. And funny enough, you just would never have guessed that somebody like that was capable of what we know that he did. That's just the truth of it. But the judge asked him a series of questions. What was his highest educational level? I believe he said he actually had an AA. I don't know in what, but I thought he was probably just a dropout. But apparently he did get an associate's degree in something. He answered all the questions lucidly, and everything else was just yes sir and no sir. But he didn't contest anything. And then there was a series of papers with his public defender. She's showing him things, and I could tell he was looking. We couldn't hear anything that they were discussing, even though we were only a couple of yards away from them, behind them. He would nod, and agree with certain things, whatever she was saying. And then we finally saw him signing something, and that was, I guess, the first moment that I thought, okay, he is taking it. Because up until today, literally while we were in that room, there was a chance that he could still say no, that he would prefer it to go to trial, at which case it would. They would reschedule it for another day, obviously, but it would go to trial. So he had agreed to that, but then they had the prosecutor read a kind of a statement of, what happened to Stefanie. She recounted the events of 1982. She stumbled a couple of times, got a couple of dates, messed up, but she had the gist of everything. And then she also outlined just a few pieces of evidence that they would have used if it did go to trial, basically to convince him that, this is a case that they were very confident that they would win. And if he was convicted of first-degree murder, he would most certainly be sent to Jessup Correctional Institution, someplace harder than Eastern Correctional, where he is now, where he's been since 1989. So she went through this, kind of a summary of the events of 1982. And what was interesting, or new to me at least, was when she got to the evidence, when she said that not only was there DNA in his blood that was found in Stefanie's car, and his fingerprints were also found in the car. They knew for certain that he had been in the car, but the trick that they took 15 months, putting this case together to confirm, was placing him in the car, in an aggressive position, not just as a passenger. Because at some point, I'm backtracking now, but I'm guessing the public defender came up with this concoction for him as a possible line of defense. He was going to say, if it went to trial, his position was that he met Stefanie at a bar, got into the car with her, and then some random guy, presumably her ex-husband, is what he's suggesting, saw them in the car and attacked him. That's what he was saying, attacked them. Of course, that doesn't explain how he ended up, being spotted throwing partial remains in the woods a couple of weeks later, but I digress. But anyway, the prosecutor said that in addition to the blood that was in the car, we knew that part of her broken fingernails had been found in the car. Because remember, her other remains were never found, just the partial skull on Larchdale Road. But the fingernails that were found in the car, she said, did contain his DNA. And that was like the smoking gun if there ever was one. So knowing that, that they were able to confirm without any doubt that his DNA was under her fingernails, which were broken off in the struggle in the car, that would have been the case right there. So then the big dramatic moment, if there was one, in this sentencing hearing today, the judge asks him, he says, "You've just heard the prosecutor recount this overview. Do you agree that this description was accurate?" And this was the one time where he paused and he looked, he talked to the defender. Again, couldn't tell what they were saying, but you could tell he was just like trying to confirm that this is, what he's agreeing to, that sort of thing. But it went on for almost 30 seconds. I mean, I would say it had to have been 25 to 30 seconds. And I think all of us in the front row had that nagging thought, like, oh no, is he actually going to, try to pull something here and throw this, and make it go to trial. But after that long, nervous pause, all he said was, "Yes, sir." And in those two words, that was the closest that we've seen to an actual confession in this crime. He acknowledged that what she described, the struggle in the car, his DNA being under her fingernails, that was accurate. And he said, "Yes, sir." And then the judge proceeded, to tell him like what his rights were going to be, like for an appeal if he chose to do it, which nothing would surprise me with him. But at the same time, I really don't think he will, because again, just seeing him in person and the fact that he was there for this and he agreed to it, it just seemed like he has nothing better, literally, than to take this. But the judge gave him the chance. He said, "Do you have anything you'd like to say to the court? Not necessarily to us or to the family, but just to the court." And he said, "No, sir." So I could tell like that was a little bit of a letdown, because we knew the odds were long against him saying something in court, like him to actually like get up and publicly apologize or anything like that. I don't think anyone was expecting that, and of course it hasn't happened yet. But that was really it. Then the judge, repeated that sentence. He said, 33 years on top of what he's currently serving. And then, we went out and, just kind of recapped, and the prosecutor came out, the detective came out. And another twist in this is Walsh actually has a daughter who contacted me through Facebook when she found his name. She was just searching for him because I won't get into this in too much detail, but she basically said that her mom had separated from him like in the early 70s, when she knew he was bad news, but before the really bad news, obviously. But this lady, I guess was searching for him, and his name came up in a hit on my blog about this case. So she had reached out to me and asked, if I wanted to put her in touch with Stefanie's family, which I did. And Christy recently, just last week actually, called her, spoke to her, and she had put her in touch with Detective Nelson. And the idea was that she does want to talk to her father, but she only wants to try to convince him to relinquish some of these answers. What happened that day? How did he meet her? What did he do with her? Is there any chance that any remains can be recovered so she can get, some semblance of a decent burial? Because the daughter wants nothing else to do with him. In the detective's words today, said she wants to see him under the jail. I mean, it's as bad as that. But he didn't want her to write to him just yet, because he was afraid, rightfully so, that if he got a letter from his long lost daughter, he might have put everything on hold. He might have said, taken a different approach. So he said, let's wait until this is over with. Now it is. So he's encouraged her to write that letter. He's also encouraged us to write letters to him if we wanted to, which I certainly think it's worth a shot. I mean, the guy has I don't think he is going to put us on the visiting list for coming to see him, because he doesn't seem like the type who's going to want to talk to us directly. But who knows? He might be willing to put it down on paper. So, but Detective Nelson also said he got the sense that he does want to talk. It's just getting him to that point. I don't know how, but again, I mean, at this point, nothing is going to, we're never probably going to know the full details of what happened. But if there's any way we can get him to just shed a little bit more light on, some of these questions that are still lingering. Most importantly, is there any chance of recovering any remains? That's the main thing. If there's anything else that we could do, that would be it. But that's pretty much it. I mean, it's been a long day. Like I said, I've been up since 5:30 and driving from Virginia to Upper Marlboro and back. And just, it's draining to go through that. I mean, I was surprised at I was more stressed out about just getting there on time and finding parking and all of that than I was seeing him. But at the same time, when that moment does come and you see him right there and you think that's the guy, that did this and all these other things. It's just a very surreal situation. And you just, it's almost like you're watching a movie. But yeah, there's going to be a few stories. I'm sure, there's been a press release that came out from the state's attorney's office today. So there'll be some stories in the news probably tomorrow and later this week. But hopefully, when his daughter writes to him, maybe, or the detective, now that it's over with, maybe the detective will talk to him and, he'll just, now that he can't be charged with anything else for Stefanie's case, maybe he'll, just bring up some of the details and we'll finally have some more answers. But the main part is done. I mean, we've actually seen him in court be sentenced for that crime. And that's something that we really never thought was going to happen. It's happened. So if I hear anything else, you'll hear it soon. Thanks.